Hey guys, thanks for joining us again for another edition of When That Ruled the World. Tonight I'm joined by Samantha Maybe, SkeleTroy Blockbuster, and Fyrehart Tom. We are discussing a band that is all very near and dear to our hearts, Queen. I've made it pretty clear from the Flash Gordon review that Queen's my all-time number one favorite band. That is true. Grew up with them, and I'm pretty sure everyone else is going to have a similar story. So I'll knock out my end of that pretty quick. For the uninitiated, which it really shouldn't be anyone if you're listening to this, Queen is a band from the UK, came out in 1971, released their first album on Trident Records in 1973, self-titled record, and then did more or less a record every year or every other year up until the early 80s, and then they slowed down over time, and then eventually Freddie Mercury, the vocalist, very famously died of AIDS in 1990, I believe. 91. It was 91. And that's a very, very short and very, very abridged of their history. So they're kind of responsible, in my opinion, for every genre of music that came out after they did. They took stuff that came before them, adapted it into their sound, and we were talking about a band called Arion earlier. That band's really good at taking any genre and doing a song or two of just that genre. Queen would find that sound that appealed to them and integrate it into what they did, and it was still you couldn't not know it was a Queen song. You know, just the way John Deacon played bass, Roger Taylor played drums, Freddie sang, played piano, and Brian May played guitar and sang. It's unmistakably Queen. Very few bands come to mind that you can hear almost nothing and realize it's Queen. It's beautiful. There's so much more depth to the band beyond their hits, although those hits are wonderful. To me, I think that you just start flipping through their albums, and there's just every time I listen to an album I haven't listened to in a long time, I find something new, and I've been listening to them for 30-some years now. The first exposure I had to Queen that I can remember was the Flash Gordon movie. That soundtrack was done front to back by them, even the orchestrated stuff, and just phenomenal. It goes from weird synthesizer-y stuff to flat-out rock and roll and everything in between. It's very effective, especially given the camp nature of the film. Not long after that, I got my hands on the Iron Eagle soundtrack a couple years later, which had One Vision on it. Found out more about this band Queen. Like, for some reason, I thought that because they were doing that soundtrack for Flash Gordon that they were this obscure band or something. And then Iron Eagle came out, and that soundtrack came out, and I was like, there's Queen again. There's this fucking band again. And I did a little research. There was no internet. You couldn't just go, Queen.
Yeah.
And look stuff up. And unless you knew someone that was really into the band, and everyone I knew was in elementary school. What the fuck do they know about music? And my parents, they're fucking... Yeah, they're ancient by my standards. They didn't know nothing as far as I was concerned. I found out later this was not true. My dad was a really huge music lover. And... But, ultimately I just went into a store and I said, do you have any Queen? They're like, are you kidding? And they walked me over to this big stack of stuff. I said, okay. So I decided that I would just go in order, and I bought the very first Queen record, which at first was a disappointment because it didn't sound like the Flash Gordon soundtrack. But then it was a huge awesome because it sounded better. Everything was covered on that thing. I listened to that thing over and over, back to front to back, you name it. And then Lose the World and Queen 2 and Day at the Races, Night at the Opera. It goes on. And they're just really the hugest piece of pop culture in my life. Always have been, always will be. There are scads more stories, but before it, I don't want to go for 900 years without letting everyone else weigh in. So we're going to go in order of pictures on my screen as usual, so Sam is up next. How did you get into Queen?
Well, I kind of have a
a two-pronged story to how I was originally introduced and then more introduced to the point that I was actually interested in Queen. So the first time I ever heard anything by Queen at all, which wasn't actually Queen, it was one of my friends playing Bohemian Rhapsody on the piano, was in middle school. I was in 7th grade, and one of my good friends was obsessed with Queen. And I had no idea who these people were. I wasn't allowed to listen to music like that when I was younger. And so I was in a production of The Music Man. I was Marion. And yeah, every day, almost every day, this kid would play Bohemian Rhapsody on the piano when we had breaks in rehearsal. And everyone would be singing with him, and I had no idea what this song was. But it terrified me. I'm like, why are they singing about their mother killing a person? Like, I had no idea what was going on.
Mama, no, don't sing that part. Oh God, no.
No, it was so funny. I just remember being terrified by this song. I had no idea what it was about, and I just didn't get it. Then fast forward a few years, same kid, still friends with him, and in high school, this one time at band camp.
I can see where this story's going.
Yeah, no. But we were, it wasn't actually at band camp. We were on the way to a marching band competition, though. And he would always listen to Queen, of course, on the bus on the way there. And he was listening to Death on Two Legs. I explicitly remember it was Death on Two Legs. And that's one of the only times I've ever heard the song, but I still remember it. But it was that and a few other songs. I don't remember all of them, just that one for some reason. But after that, I was just like, hey, Queen, they're pretty cool, yo. And so, yeah, the rest is pretty much history. I have a few other interesting stories about where I've sang different Queen songs, but I'll save them for later.
Troy, how'd you get into
them? I first heard Queen at a very young age. My dad used to listen to like a lot of hard rock stuff like Kiss, and when I was really young I was into Alice Cooper more than Queen. But I really appreciated, like, it's kind of weird because when you're a kid you don't know why you like the things that you like. I knew that I liked Queen, but I didn't really know why. Then when like growing up, when I was a teenager, I started playing guitar and hanging out with other musicians and kind of went on like this classic rock renaissance of sorts, where like I rediscovered Queen and knew exactly why I liked them. And then like I also got into the Highlander movies, which Queen is very influential to them. I mean, there's kind of a parallel, you know, like with both Highlander and Queen, there can be only one.
True.
You know, it's like you were saying, Jimmy, like they are one of the few bands like the Doors or Led Zeppelin that could take any style and make it theirs. And there's really very few bands that can do that, and Queen does it well.
Yeah. Definitely.
My youthful exposure to Queen began with fear. I distinctly remember being in kindergarten, and there were these 3 boys who would pick on me. And one day, the version of lock you and pick you up and drop you. And I distinctly remember being like horrified. Oh my gosh, I'm 5 years old and these are going to beat me up because they don't like my clothes. And then this spunky little girl came over and was just like, don't hurt her, she's my friend. And her name was Rebecca, and everybody was afraid of her because she was so hardcore. So they never bothered me again. I'm friends with her to this day. She's one of my friends. Sam,
Her name was Rebecca?
her name is Rebecca. She's one of my closest friends. Sam knows her.
Nice.
And so that's how we became friends, because in a very circumvented way through this perversion of Queen. So that was probably the first time I ever heard anything remotely there. I grew up with parents who could not let go of the 80s, so their musical repertoire, and thus later mine, was, involved quite a lot of Queen. And I also, personally developed a really strong love for classic rock and bands like Electric Light Orchestra, and then, of course, that naturally leads you to bands like Queen. So I absolutely adored them.
So, Tom, I know you've been itching to tell us this story.
With me, I pretty much was raised on Queen. My mum fucking loves Queen. Like, it's probably to the point of obsession, and it's like, oh my god. At first, I don't think I did like them, but it was probably more of a, oh, my parents like this, sort of thing when I was like really little. And then the older I got, I was just like, this band is the best thing ever to exist in the history of forever. And like, the funny thing is that now, at this point, I've actually heard more Queen songs than my mom has.
Nice.
Which is kind of funny. Like, I remember after I was listening to Princes of the Universe, and she's like, I've never heard that before. And I was like, really? I thought you were supposed to be the bigger Queen fan than I am. And
well, was
yeah,
your mom a Highlander fan?
No, as far as I can tell, no. The funny thing is, my mom and dad are probably like the same age as Brian May and Roger Taylor.
Mm.
They were like born in the same couple of years, I think.
I would love to hear someone's perspective of being at that right age, and then when Queen first came out, that what the fuck moment, what that must have been like. Because I think so many of us, by the time we heard Queen, they'd already made their mark on the music world, and many bands that we probably listened to before or after were heavily influenced by them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking over the opposite wall to me. I have 5 little frames, and they go from left to right in this order. Johnny Cash with the middle finger, Godzilla from the Godzilla Final Wars poster, a Spider-Man poster with a little quote about courage, a really cool relief piece of Frank the Bunny from Donnie Darko, and then the Queen crest on like this kind of fiery starburst with a couple of the silhouettes of the members.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all kind of very important influences to me in one way or another. And I keep thinking that as awesome as it is to have them all equally sized, Queen really should be on top of them much larger. Because, but all those influences were huge and are kind of irrevocably linked to me, for a lot of reasons. Kind of to touch on something Troy had said about musicianship. I mean, I've mentioned it, I don't think in a podcast to any detail, but I was a musician in a quote-unquote former life, and Roger Taylor's drumming is easily my top influence next to, Charlie Benante from Anthrax and SOD. And those two guys, they hit really hard, but they had a great sense of the pocket and the backbeat and dynamics. And they were never like a Ringo, where you're just kind of keeping the beat, kind of sitting there, or the fella from The Doors, who was a just phenomenal drummer, but he was kind of in the corner doing his own thing, or like Bonzo and Zeppelin was kind of off doing his own thing. You couldn't imagine those bands without those drummers, but there was something about the way Roger plays the drums where you could, if you want to and concentrate on it and focus on him, you can, but it's never he never steps outside the box he should be in as a drummer. He always is very conscious of the music that's around him. And I think part of that is because he's a songwriter himself. So I always kind of took that.
Yeah.
And Charlie, same thing with Anthrax. He wrote most of their material. So it's like you have more respect for music when you don't have to feel like you're fighting for your voice within it. So I always try to take that with me as a drummer. And certainly vocally, even though I can't sing a note to save my life, they influenced me because just like vocal layering. You know, when I would do vocals, even for the death metal stuff that I did, I loved to layer things and get this really great sound out of it. There's one pretty infamous scream in one of our tunes. People are always like, "How'd you do that?" I'm like, I layered it 8 times. That's how I did that. You know, I just did 8 takes. I'm just at a mic and I have my headphones on. I'm like, all right, you ready? Roll. All right, do it again. And then, you know, just do it like a couple different ways, and then layer it, and then you pan them a certain way, and you learn how it's going to come out just right. Yet that came from Queen's just impeccable sense of multi-tracking, which was brand new when they came out in many ways. And, you know, the Beatles kind of pioneered it, but these guys took it, made it their own, and made it better, and forever changed the way albums were recorded. And they could pull it off live. Again, something that's so rare in rock music in particular, where, you know, and they recognized when a song was a studio baby. So they either didn't play it live, or when they played it live, they made all the necessary changes to make it.
Yeah.
It made more sense. I have several live DVDs of theirs, but the one from Montreal sticks out the most because it's like that perfect point in their career. It was recorded in, like, I believe 1980, so it was right after jazz had come out, I believe. So it was like that was like the pinnacle as far as I'm concerned. And they open with this really upbeat rock version of "We Will Rock You." You know, just, you know, we will rock you tonight. And they're just like, what are you doing? Like, that makes no sense, but I love it. You know? It's like, who does that? Queen does that. And they do it so well. You know, I always stick with the self-titled when I'm in a bind for something to listen to. And there's tracks all over their career. All the way through. There's documentaries I watch when I'm in the mood to watch something, music, and learn something. I watch their stuff, like the Champions of the World. It was on VHS, never been released on DVD. I have 2 copies of it because I bought them both, and because I had one, I lost it. I bought one, thought I lost it, and bought another one, then found the other one. I had the 2 next to each other. Digitized it last year, and I just watched the digital copy, and like that's really it aired on VH1 a few times, and then it went away. Like, you never saw it again. BBC put out a documentary just this past year, which is more like the behind the music kind of thing, where they kind of went into the bad stuff, but it was done tastefully and really entertainingly. Like, there's this story about how Freddie and their manager were at dinner somewhere, and Freddie mentioned that he had was doing an interview with, you know, Vogue or someplace or something, and the manager was like, "You don't do interviews without my say-so. I told you that." He says, "I've told you that over and over again, and if you're not going to play by our rules, I'm out of here." And he got up and he left. And then the manager says he goes home, and he just flicked on the light and was about to sit down to do something, and this rock came flying through his window, and he looks out down to the street, and there's Freddie with his hands on his hips. He goes, "Don't you ever fucking leave me again!" like that's Freddie. I mean, here's a guy that just. When they say larger than life, no, he was larger than that. He was larger than life. He was, and still remains. I mean, the guy's been dead for 12 years, and he's still one of the biggest names in music ever. There was another story from that documentary, which I absolutely adore.
Where 22 years?
22 years. 22 years. Yeah, math. Pah. It. I allow me to have my delusions. I'm 25, not 35.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But there's this other story where he's in a pub before he was with Queen, and he looked really sullen. And the guy walked up and goes, "What's wrong, Fred?" And he says, I'm not gonna be a rock star. I'm not." And the guy just kind of tilts and looks at him, because here's a guy who's his whole life's been like, "I will be a rock star." For him to walk in and just be like, "I'm not gonna be a rock star." The guy tilts his head and he stands up and he goes, "I'm going to be a legend." And he just throws his arms up. Thinking to myself, what arrogance. But that was what sold Queen. I mean, it was this combination. At the same time, there was such a respectful humility split four ways. And then every so often, Freddie would just be like, "Bah!" with ego. And it was just this flamboyant thing that you never quite knew where the stage ended and the regular person began. I think with Freddie, I think to him, life was a stage, like, with Shakespeare. He just always saw himself as performing, and it come through with everything. And there's tons of stuff we can talk about with history and whatever. But just, and in case you couldn't tell if you're listening to this, we are all really heavy Queen fans, so this is total fan worship. If you're not into Queen, why are you listening to this? Just absolutely huge. Kind of to put something else on it, like for a while I thought I was going to get out of Queen, and then I heard Metallica cover Stone Cold Crazy. And I was right back in, and I've never looked back. I've always put them right next to each other. I always say that my favorite bands are Queen and Napalm Death, because if I could just take one Queen album and one Napalm Death record, the original Queen self-titled and Napalm Death Peel Sessions, I'm good. Like, that's everything I'll ever need musically. It's all there. And it's just such a huge part of my existence. That I never really got into Highlander. I watched it a few times. I bought the album without having seen the film, and then I saw the film. I wanted to kind of understand what they were referring to and stuff, but it wasn't a huge thing. But that album's great. Flash Gordon I've mentioned, Sheer Heart Attack, the song and the album. The Sheer Heart Attack song, I love it because it was like this answer to the punk scene. They had this big hard-on against the punks because the punks saw them as like the establishment of rock, and they were trying to tear it down. There was actually a pretty big rivalry between Queen and the Sex Pistols. And so they do Sheer Heart Attack, the song, which is more punk than punk. And I just kind of go, well, that's all I'll ever need. Yeah. Granted, I'm huge into crust punk and regular punk and hardcore and stuff. But it still goes back to that. It's like, you want to listen to some punk? I'm like, it's either Bad Religion or that song. That's it. That's all there is when you say punk to me. and heavy metal, it's like, well, they kind of did it better than anybody else. There's this video on one of my other YouTube channels. I call it The Heaviest Riff. And it's from a song called Was It Worth It? And it's just a huge arena rock riff. And it kind of sits by itself. And you throw a little pitch shift on it, so where it's then from standard E, you put it down to about C or B, and suddenly it becomes the heaviest metal riff you've ever heard in your life. Like Crowbar wishes they could have written that. But that is something that maybe because of their flamboyant nature, or because of they're regarded as these rock icons or whatever, this pop rock icons, that people don't realize what brilliant, intelligent musicians they were, because they did so many things better than anyone else could do them, even if you'd never hear it. Unless you bought the record, you didn't get to hear. And that always just kind of made me shake my head. So many of their hits, and there's a ton of stories. I'm not going to go into all of them, or any of them really, but where the song almost didn't make it to the record, and it was like a huge hit. huge, and it happened almost every single time they had like a huge #1 deal. Just you're like, what are the odds? They just constantly just we're Queen. Another record, fuck it. Yeah. So, but Sam, you said that you'd sang some of these songs in various outlets. I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah, it's pretty much just Bohemian Rhapsody, but I've got 3 different stories about singing it. So they're not in, no wait, they might not be in chronological order. I don't know. I'm telling them in the order of how good they are, but
Jimmy, edit it so it's chronological.
Fuck that, boys.
okay.
Organic, man.
So the thing you have to know about Sam is that even though I'm like a crazy scientist person now, if you knew me in high school, you would have thought I was gonna be a theater/music person. Pretty much everyone in my town is surprised that I didn't major in music. So I spent all of my time in band and choir in the theater, blah, blah, blah. So in my high school choir, my senior year, I believe, we sang Bohemian Rhapsody at our spring concert. And we had a full band playing it with us, which was pretty cool. Admittedly, I'm sure anyone, who is a diehard Queen fan probably heard it and wanted to kill all of us. But
Infidels!
It was fun at the time. One of the other really memorable times I sang it was in Japan in a karaoke bar.
Nice.
Yeah, it was just me, one of my American friends who was there with me, and it was my birthday in Japan, and it was my 20th birthday, which is our 21st birthday in the US. So I've got to celebrate my 21st twice, which, yay. But it was just the two of us and a bunch of Japanese kids who I don't even know if they know Queen. I think a couple of them did, but we sang Bohemian Rhapsody, and they're all just staring wide-eyed at us, and that was a good time.
That's funny because there's there's this one story from Metal a Headbanger's Journey about how in Japanese karaoke bars where there's different kinds, and there's the one where the businessmen go, and they all want to sing Highway Star from Deep Purple, and it just never occurred to me that someone would allow you to sing something other than that in a Japanese karaoke bar.
Well,
you learn something every day.
The kind we were at, it's very like a closed off kind of thing. It's basically like a hotel room, but there's just a couple couches and a TV.
Oh yeah, those things, yeah.
Yeah. So you can sing whatever the heck you want. The last story, which I personally think is the most interesting, me and some of my high school friends, we used to go to showings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show like once or twice a month because there's a theater near me that would do them that often. So we would go, and one night the power just went out in the middle of the show, and there were never that many people there. So I guess the generator kicked some of the lights back on, and everyone's just sitting there like, now what? And the manager's like, well, it's gonna come back on soon. It does this all the time, blah blah blah. So me and my friends got up, stood in the aisles, and we just started singing some songs.
Nice.
So we sang, what did we sing? We sang All That Jazz from Chicago, and pretty sure we sang at least the first, the first 2 verses of Bohemian Rhapsody, but that was interesting because we're all decked out in our Rocky Horror gear and probably looked ridiculous, but hey, it was fun.
Which character were you?
We never really picked specific characters. I generally would just wear black fishnets and a short black skirt and a corset or something, but just
that's
general Rocky Horror stuff.
Yeah. This old thing? No.
Yep.
Troy.
Strode on.
Yes. You, sir, active musician, play a lot. Anything similar where you've done a cover live or or recorded your own versions of something?
No, this is probably a good time to tell my favorite Queen-related memory, though.
Go for it.
I actually got to see Brian May live in concert.
Oh, on one of his solo tours, or was
No, he was with the Foo Fighters, actually.
what?
Yeah.
Left
There-
field. Hello. Yes, this is Troy. I'm coming there.
Yeah, there was there was a touring concert here in Canada called Somersault.
Mm.
And it was hosted by Our Lady Peace. There was also like a Perfect Circle, Smashing Pumpkins, Foo Fighters, all kinds of great bands. Best concert I've ever been to. And yeah, the Foo Fighters did a cover of Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar. And Brian May came out to play lead guitar.
Wow.
Completely unexpected and completely fucking awesome.
Nice. Nice. That kind of reminds me of the Concert for Life that they did, the tribute to Freddie they did after he died. They had like a couple dozen, people show up, and Metallica opened up. And when Metallica opens up, that you're in for a pretty fucking good show. George Michael sang with Queen, and it was like, for a while there, it was, is George Michael going to be in Queen? Is he going to be in Queen? And there were talks of it. It was going to happen. And they're like, nah, fuck it. And which, that would have been awesome. But because then you look at what they got. They got Paul Rodgers, and he's all right. But no. I like the songs they wrote with him. I do. But I really don't like his voice.
Well, that's why they call it Paul Rodgers and Queen.
No, I think they call it Queen
There
plus
can
Paul
be
Rodgers because
only
Paul
one.
Rodgers is a fucking piece of shit asshole. And he's like, I'm not part of Queen. I'm Paul Rodgers, goddammit. And you just get, because, you see the footage, and the guy's going out on this hi, I'm a singer kind of ramp, and I'm so cool. That's kind of like his stance, man. It's like, no, you don't sing with Queen and act like you're more important. You're singing with Queen. I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You bow down to this fucking band. You just don't do all the shit you're doing. When the songs are good, and he doesn't sound bad by any stretch of the imagination. However, if I'm given the choice of George Michael and Queen or Paul Rodgers and Queen, I'll take George Michael every single day. Love it. Love it. And there was, for several songs, they needed a rhythm guitar player. And they're like, who can we get for rhythm guitar for the Concert of Life? And they're like, oh. Open the Rolodex. Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath. You want to come down? Sure. And he just comes down and plays rhythm guitar with Queen. Like, it's no big deal. And then you got the remaining members of Queen, Tony Iommi, and then they hand the mic to James Hetfield to do Stone Cold Crazy. And you're like, is this gonna be real life forever? Like, I hope so. And then at that point in history, like Elton John and Axl Rose had like a thing, like they were arguing, like Eminem and whoever he was arguing with a couple years back. Elton John. Right? Go figure, right? That's how Elton John stays relevant. He just argues with current artists, like, oh. That's his whole argument too. Oh. Doesn't really talk like that though. And the gap in his teeth is almost as big as the one in Cortana's in Halo 4. Just saying. For more on that, go over to the That Role Plays Halo 4 video after this podcast. But there was this thing with him and Axl Rose, and Axl Rose played, well, Guns N' Roses played, Axl being a part of them. I keep forgetting that it wasn't just one guy. They played a couple songs and they did their thing. And then later that night, when they do Bohemian Rhapsody, Elton John is doing the piano and singing. And then for the, so you think, Axl Rose comes out. And you're like, all right, that's kind of cool, actually. And then he gets arm in arm with Elton John, and they sing, and like the crowd's going nuts because they're like, they like each other now. It's like, it's only one song; they'll get through it. And but it was still one of those moments, you know. And Liza Minnelli doing "We Are the Champions." On one hand, that's awesome. On the other hand, she has that thing she does with her voice that a lot of theater trained singers do that I can't stand. Oh,
Oh, that vibrato thing.
it's like, and we ain't gonna lose. You're like, oh, dude. Like, fuck, this isn't the Wizard of Oz. You're not your mom. Shut the fuck up. Whatever. But I mean, that concert was just fuck. Like, I videotaped it when it was on MTV, when it was, you know, as close to live as you were going to get. It was like a day later or something like that. Or it might have been live. I'm not even sure. But recorded the whole thing. I still have the original tape that I taped it from. And I watched the whole thing just sitting there like, oh my God. Oh my God. And it just, pretty much like the coolest Queen thing I ever experienced. Was gonna see him when they came to the States last time. Didn't have the money. Was heartbroken. You know, one of the first questions I ask people when I meet them when I have the chance is, what's your favorite band? And if they say Queen, it's like, this person is a forever friend. Because, and it just so happens that, 3 out of the other 5 members of That Ruled are also very, very huge Queen fans. And I'm like, I did not know this. And I was like, whew, now I feel better.
I actually remember when I tried, I haven't watched all of it yet, but the first attempt I made at trying to watch your Flash Gordon review, when I got to the bit where you were going on about Queen, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, and to reference what Tom's saying, that's a 3-part review. It's about a 48-minute investment. Not really designed to be watched all at once, but most people do. And if you've watched it, I'm raising a wine glass to you. Thank you. It was a lot of fun to do. So, favorite Queen album, Sam?
Honestly, I don't think I know which album most of my favorite songs are on.
That's fair.
Same.
So I'm going to go with classic Queen probably being your favorite.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Okay. See? Pulled your fat out of the fryer on that one.
Good.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with liking the hits. Do yourself a favor and get your hands on the other versions of greatest hits and widen that palette. And I will bombard you with the more obscure Queen, and you will fall deeper in love with Queen, and all will be well with the universe.
Indeed. I like this plan.
I'm totally.
I actually remember once going through a list of songs that was either on their first album or their second album, and I was just looking through the songs and came across one called "Someday, One Day," and
oh yeah,
that I saw that it said that Brian May did the vocals on that, and I was like, wow, really? So I went to YouTube, found it, and I was like, oh my God, this thing is fucking amazing.
yeah.
It's like the most acoustic sounding Queen song I've ever heard, and it's just so fucking awesome.
Yeah, I really wish that I'd been more familiar with that song earlier in life. I have grown to love it in the last 3 or 4 years. When my father died, had I known that song, that would have been the perfect song for me to play at his wake. Because I owe so much of my musical background to him. He always was encouraging me to go and listen to stuff. And one time I was listening to Anthrax, and did a cover of Pipeline, which is his old surf tune. And he comes in the door and he goes, "You like that?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Come here." He pulls me out in the living room, grabs this old record and blows the dust off, pops it on the record player, and it's the Ventures doing the original version of that. Which Outside of the production is exactly the same. And I'm like, oh. He goes, yeah. He says, you're not as rebellious as you thought. Okay. I says, you got me. So anytime I would ever discover something that I really thought was special, I'd always play it for him, and he'd give me either the seal of approval or the go back to the drawing board or, stop smoking pot, stupid, And I eventually, I don't smoke pot and none of that stuff at all. And my music taste has arguably gotten better. So go figure. Don't do drugs, kids.
I actually remember coming across a song that set on the same album, I think, that said it was sung by Roger Taylor, and I was like, well, no surprise there. I mean, he hits that friggin' high note in Bohemian Rhapsody and that, so yeah. I'm not really surprised. Like, 3 out of 4 of the guys in that band could sing pretty damn well. Or at least, I'm not sure whether or not John Deacon could, because he never really did anything.
No, he doesn't. He asserts that he doesn't really sing on anything, and just all the film of him singing is just film. Yeah. He's like, no, we mix me out every time. I suck. That's his thing. But
he is a song. Yeah, they're all 3 of them are songwriters. All 4 of them, sorry, are songwriters like, as well.
I want to break free.
Really...
Everyone always talks about I want to break free being like this gay anthem, and John Deacon, a married man with kids, wrote it. It's like I understand why it became an anthem for that movement. I think it's very appropriate, but the facts are, no, wasn't written to be that.
I love that song. I love that
song. Apparently that music video wasn't taken too well in America because they didn't get the joke. Is that the fact that
I don't think it's not that we didn't
it's supposed to be making fun of a... No, I mean, like, the cross-dressing bit's supposed to be making fun of a show in England.
Yes, but at the same time...
But, like, apparently no one got the joke in America, so they were just like, ooh, what the hell are they doing?
But even if they got the reference, there was still this, children will cross-dress and grow tits spontaneously and take it down. And then you look at, like, what's on MTV now, which is no music, and, so fuck MTV.
I actually remember, I think it was in, like, a documentary or something, Freddie Mercury, like when Freddie Mercury adopted that mustache that was like apparently a big thing, like a sort of associated with gay men.
Yes.
So most people in America were kind of like, oh shit.
Still is. Absolutely. I mean, we call it a Freddie Mercury mustache now, and just like the really thin mustaches are like rapey and. Child molester mustaches and stuff. There's all different degrees of sexual deviancy related to facial hair in America. I'll have to show it to you. But Tom, do you have one particular record that stands out? Is it a kind of magic? Because you mentioned Highlander and so forth.
Actually, with me, I'm in the same boat as Sam, as I've never actually heard like a full album on its own. I've just heard like greatest hits and gone looking for other songs as well. And actually the first one wasn't so much the greatest hits album, it was a VHS called Queen's Greatest Flicks, and it was like a bunch of their music videos.
Oh yeah.
And it's sort of like it opens with it goes from like the first line of Bohemian Rhapsody into Killer Queen, and Killer Queen's set over like all these like concert footage and music video footage and info about the people in the band. So like when they were born, what their favorite drink is, all this other shit, which I thought was really cool. Like looking back and it's like, wow, that's pretty helpful. Getting all this info about the band while listening to Killer Queen. And then, that's actually how I found out about the movie Flash, actually. I don't think I've ever actually seen it the whole way through yet, but that's actually like the last song on the main lot of that is actually Flash. So, and then
if you watch the review in entirety, you'll see most of the film. Don't worry.
Like and then I've noticed I used to wonder. I used to get some songs wrong when I listened back to them. I'd be like, oh wait, that doesn't sound like that, because after a while, if you watch through all the little creditsy things, it cuts to stuff from like the early days, so like Liar and keep Yourself Alive and
Mhm.
Now I'm Here. And Now I'm Here, I actually didn't know was a Queen song when I was a kid. I vaguely remember it, but then my mum was playing, like, I think it was on one of their greatest hits albums, and she was playing it, and I'm like, that's a Queen song? And she's like, yeah. Like, didn't you know that?
Your mum.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
I can just see your mom going Tourette's for a second. Fuck you! You're grounded. Go to your room. Totally.
Yeah, there's a few songs that I hadn't heard in ages that I finally remembered when I was thinking back of songs that were on that video. And I was like, oh, Tie Your Mother Down. And I remember telling a friend about that, and he was like, that's a bit of a weird name for a song.
Well, if you think about the context of it, it was kind of like the next evolutionary step lyrically from the 50s and 60s songs of, fucking squares, and that's basically what that song was just like, we're gonna have a good time. You tie your mother down so we can go out and have a good time. It wasn't like, tie her down, I'm gonna tickle her nipples with a feather. It wasn't like that.
God.
I wouldn't tie any of your mothers down. Not even on a bet. Not with a stolen length of rope. Absolutely not. No. However, if they were a square and wanted to keep me from listening to rock and roll music, I just might have to. Don't stop me.
I feel that that's fair.
Say again?
I feel that that's fair.
I am so very pleased that you approve, Sam. Giggle followed by adolescent sniggering. But obviously I've made it clear that the self-titled record, for me, is far and above everything else they've done. However, homework assignment. For both the listeners and the participants. I know that Troy has already completed this homework assignment. I'm almost certain of it. You must listen to a song called Ogre Battle.
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah! It's off Queen 2. And it came out in 74? I want to say 74 or 70, pretty sure 74. It was a year after Queen came out. And here's why it's so important, especially for you metal fans. It's more Iron Maiden than Iron Maiden, and it came out nearly 10 years before they formed. So, suck it. I like Iron Maiden well enough. But, everything that I ever got out of any Iron Maiden song, I got out of Ogre Battle. 1,000 times over.
All right, and video game fans, here's your homework. Listen to Ogre Battle and March of the Black Queen while playing Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen for Super Nintendo.
Zing! Nice tie-in, sir. Nice tie-in. Hadn't even considered that. Queen did so many things first, and they never get credit for it. The punk thing with the song Sheer Heart Attack, heavy metal with Stone Cold Crazy, fuck Black Sabbath, never liked them. Yes, I said it. I respect their contribution to music. I respect that most of the bands I like were influenced by them. But me, I can't listen to them. And arguably, there were things that Queen were doing that were along those lines and did it better. There's a certain argument with all bands and all music that you have to like this if you like this genre. No, I don't. I can like whatever I want. Sabbath gets all this credit for influencing heavy metal, and yet when Elektra Records releases this huge anniversary record called Rubaiyat, and they get all their best artists to contribute like what they felt was their most influential song from the label, Metallica chooses Queen. Just saying.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If it weren't for hard rock, we wouldn't even probably have heavy metal anyway.
That is the biggest understatement I think you'll ever utter in your entire existence. Because let's take Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Queen out of the equation. Now try to figure out how Napalm Death ever forms. It doesn't. And I would hazard sad.
Well, I don't know. To me, like, if those bands hadn't formed, who's to say that somebody else wouldn't have? You know, like music might not be in the exact same place it is now, but it's almost like the Jurassic Park thing, you know, life finds a way.
Man, you just gave me the single biggest justification. We've been tossing around an idea for a while now for another podcast. Alanah, Sam, and myself were talking about it. But Troy just gave me the perfect, that's it. That's the best way to announce it. We're going to do it. It's called All Things Meta. Talking about this rampant theories and, hey, what if this happened? Ha. And, you know, those of you that are avid listeners, going along the lines of like the whole Star Wars thing with the Force and is it magic, is it not magic? And that would be a great topic too. Like, what if this band never formed? You know, how do you get to this band? Like, you know, removing, it's like 6 degrees of separation in reverse where you just remove a link and go,
God.
okay, now fix it. You know.
Has anyone here had a song by Queen that they liked it first, and for a while they hated it, and then they liked it again?
I mean,
If
I
you
could
want,
say
I'll
that-
go first.
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Pretty much. Oh, I've got like at least two. Crazy Little Thing Called Love. I don't know why I used to hate that, but I just was like, pretty like on the fence about it for ages, and then I was like, fuck it. It's a good song. But and then there was with Bicycle Race. That was mainly because when I was in like year 9, I think, or maybe year 10, the high school I went to decided that leading up to the bike-a-thon, they would play that song during lunch. And after a while, it got really fucking annoying. So it just put me off the song for years. And then I finally was like, oh yeah, it's not bad, it's just that I had to listen to it every fucking day.
Yeah,
Like,
now
I
that
don't
you
think that-
mention it, I kind of feel the same way about We Are the Champions when the Mighty Ducks movies came out.
Oh, that's perfect. Sleeping on the Sidewalk off of News of the World. It was one of those songs I could never escape in my playlists. It would come on. Skip. Because it just, you know, that album, like News of the World, when I had it on tape, I wore that fucker out. And you kind of had to get through that song to get to everything else. And now, you know, with digital music being what it is and not being able, you know, you're almost unable to listen to albums by themselves at the way they do things now. But you can just skip stuff over. Like, I get really pissed off at myself when I throw my music collection on random and I start skipping shit. Mm-hmm. I'll hear like half a second and be like, skip. But I know there's literally days of music ahead of me. I understand that I'll come back to it at some point in the next couple of years, probably. But that song just started wearing on me for a while there, and I can listen to it now, but it's not a song I'll go out and be like, yeah, I'll fucking listen to it now, because that's a great song. Like, I'm never like drunk, like, and like, dude, you gotta hear this song, Sleeping on the Sidewalk. It's fucking awesome. Like, I've never said that. Like, you'll never hear me say it, no matter how much, you know, drink I've had. No. Sam, do you have any songs that fall into that? Where you were like one day like, meh?
No, I think I would have to agree with Troy on this one. It was We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, but that was really probably just because of, you know, pep rallies.
Yeah.
Oversaturation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I never understood why people didn't just like stop doing We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions and just have the song that made them, especially for football, have a song at a pep rally that makes perfect sense for a football game. There's a song called I Will Kill You by Cannibal Corpse. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
let's say
actually remember when I was in primary school, which is like preschool to year 7 over here, where we do these sort of war cries, and mainly most of them would just be taking a song and rearranging it to fit the the sort of we hate such and such house, whatever. And like I think We Will Rock You was the one that was used the most, and it was just like, oh come on, go with something else. Stop fucking with We Will Rock You.
can you imagine a bunch of 7th graders going, "I will kill you"? I still am stuck on that. You know, a bunch of 7th graders in their multicolored clothing and whatever they wear these days, just screaming Cannibal Corpse lyrics.
I'd pay to see that.
That'd be great. And the thing is like Corpse Grinder, George Fisher, he goes by Corpse Grinder. He's the vocalist for Cannibal Corpse these days. His kids are probably about 5 or 6 now. So I'm willing to bet that when they get to that age, that might happen. You know? And I think Alanah would get along with George quite well. Because George has one of, Mjolnir, he has Thor's hammer in his office. And he keeps it next to him when he plays World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Yeah, death metal vocalist, the highest paid death metal vocalist in history, plays World of Warcraft.
Well, yeah, I've heard about a bunch of. I've actually heard of like bands from, like either black metal or death metal or whatever bands that were inspired by either some sort of fantasy game or generally some fantasy related thing. Anyway,
that you're
like,
absolutely right. But World of Warcraft in particular in the States has such a stigma attached to it. You think about a person that looks like me, only about 50 pounds heavier, way more hair, drool, man, bathroom, like that. That's what we think of with World of Warcraft. And to think of like George Corpse Grinder Fisher, this guy whose neck is as wide as my thigh. I'm not kidding. He's got a wide freaking neck. He's like, raw. And it's just from headbanging. That's like, that's it. It doesn't work out. Fuck it.
Oh my god.
And he's sitting there going, man, I'm gonna fucking kill these fucking bitch. And he's like, he's in the horde. And I only know, all of my knowledge of World of Warcraft, I learned from him. Just watching him in documentaries going, and he talks like this because, he makes his living, yelling. So he talks like this. He's like, man, all right, I'm death metal. So you figure Alliance or the Horde? Come on, dude. I'm going to go with the Horde.
from what I've
he's
heard,
got,
the
like-
Horde is actually more like civilized than the
And he's
people
got
that use
this fucking
the Alliance.
tattoo on his lower forearm of like the symbol for the Horde. That's pretty
Wow.
hardcore. I don't care who you are. Like he always says, "Fuck the Alliance." Yeah, fuck the Alliance, man. And like fans will be at the shows and they'll be like, "Fuck the Alliance," and they don't even play World of Warcraft. They're just trying to get an autograph or something. It's just like, So I'm grateful that Queen came out when they did, because can you imagine someone like Brian May, who has a degree, a doctorate in fucking astronomy, astrophysics, like him with World of Warcraft, and then like, Queen shows these cardboard cutouts. Oh, fuck the Alliance, Oh, I love the Horde. Yeah, I've got a tattoo on my arm. He doesn't sound like that, but and then like, I bet you that Freddie Mercury. I just have this feeling he was like a really good Donkey Kong player.
I don't know. It's just something I've never thought of before.
Yeah.
Because I
My
always
brain
thought,
was just taking a minute to process that concept.
John Deacon is probably a great pinball player. I can see Freddie Mercury just playing the fuck out of Donkey Kong. Roger Taylor is a Zaxxon guy. Brian May, chess. He's like, fuck TV, chess.
I actually have to admit, when I was younger, I guess it was usually because I forgot that his name was Roger or something, but I always used to, for a while, I used to think that Roger Taylor was actually a woman. Like, looking back on it, I'm like, wow, really? How did I think a guy that looks like it wasn't even really the long hair, because I never thought Freddie Mercury or John Deacon were, even though John Deacon was, with how skinny and shit he was, he could probably have passed for a woman when they used to dress in drag all the time. It's just like, I think it was just his voice, really. Just the fact that half the notes he could hit compared to everyone else in the group.
And yet, when you hear his
stuff like
vocals,
that.
like just by themselves, he's got the harshest vocal. It's very scratchy and kind of. But yet, he can hit those really pristine highs. Weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get that. I don't. Blah, blah, blah. Who here has seen the Live Aid performance?
My mum owns it on DVD, so I'm pretty sure I've seen it at least once.
Sam, have you seen it?
Nope.
Troy?
Or at least, actually, no, I think it was on TV once that I saw it. No, I'm thinking
Live
of
Aid.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was almost thinking...
that was before you
wait,
were born.
Wait a minute.
Live Aid was in 1985, and it was at a time where Queen was on the cusp of, like, do we quit? And someone booked them, and they're like, all right. And the concept was, it was like this long, like 24, 48-hour concert, like for days. All the best bands in the world got together. It was like this long telethon, basically. And
They did one in 2008, didn't they?
Live Aid?
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah. But this one was in 1985. Yeah. So Queen goes on there and understood what they were supposed to be doing, which was entertaining people and getting them to donate money. So they went out there and did 8 minutes of hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. Like 18 minutes of just no stopping. Like they'd rehearsed this medley without it being a medley. And at the end of it, you could tell they were ready to die. But they just went out there, bam, 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 and just assaulted the audience with awesome. And then walked off stage, and it was like, oh my God. And then that was the thing that got Queen to get back together and kind of regroup and decide.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what they might have figured. Well, if this is going to be our last performance together, then we might as well make it a fucking good one. So.
And it was so good, they're like, yeah, we'll do a few more.
It's like, wow, people still love us. We should probably keep going.
To say the least, they got past a lot of their stuff, and a lot of it came from the fact that at that point Freddie was too sick to tour. So it was like, can we make this a feasible thing without touring? And they proved that they could, because they did Kind of Magic. They did that tour, and then that was the last tour they did. They ended it with the Live at Wembley stuff, which is, the most famous live material that was recorded. Which arguably, if you look at their other live stuff, like Live at Wembley is kind of weak by comparison, to be honest. Just the song selections, like Tutti Frutti, really? Fruity is good. Don't get me wrong, yeah, but no, I'm not feeling it. Sorry, moving on. And then they did a few records after that. They did Miracle, they did Innuendo, and then Made in Heaven. Which was one that which was the one that he was recording when he died. And if you haven't listened to that one, listen to it. And listen to the whole thing. And don't pause it, don't stop it, and don't let it repeat. Just listen to the whole thing and just let it sit in your brain.
Is that the one that The Show Must Go On is on?
No, that's Innuendo.
On a forum I'm on, someone was asking what they thought was like. They were asking what people thought was the most, well, like either the best song in the 90s or whatever, and a lot of people were just going generic with the generic choice of Smells Like Teen Spirit because they were going by how influential it was. And I actually was, I think like one person agreed with me, but I just said The Show Must Go On. There's like, okay. No, there's just, I'm that much of a Queen fan that I was just like, this song came out in the 90s. Okay, there you go.
See, I would have gone with Disrupts Unrest, but, but no one...
well, I guess I was going with all the emotion and that behind the song.
We're going with what, Troy?
Tornado of Souls by Megadeth.
Wow.
Well, I guess with the fact that I chose that was because it was kind of like a sort of song that signified the end of an era, really.
Mm.
The show must go on. It's like
Yeah,
it pretty much did. It was like, yeah, I'm probably gonna die, but I'm gonna go out on a high note.
Right on. And then he recorded Made in Heaven. It was actually like, I am dying. Guess what? That's what these are about. It's like that Yul Brynner commercial where he released it after he was dead. He's like, I'm Yul Brynner, and I'm dead because I smoked cigarettes. What? Ah!
That's a hard question, man, because I was like little and stuff, and I
Oh, well,
seriously
so was I. I just
Yeah.
went in retrospect.
right, but like I really wasn't I wasn't listening to that music in the 90s. It's hard for me to think about what music was in the 90s because I didn't listen to it in the 90s. And everything kind of meshes together.
It's all a blur, man.
Yeah, it is.
My preteen years, man. Fucking. That was wild times, man. Lots of birthday cake and ice cream, and I don't remember shit.
So many food comas. I just God.
I have to admit, there was a period of time, like a few years ago, where if someone tried to get me to listen to a cover of a Queen song, I would pretty much be like, haha, no. I will not accept that there is a cover of a Queen song.
There are people that
Well,
are
like-
allowed to cover Queen songs.
I actually remember finding, I think it was on one of those like Punk Goes whatever, and it was like Punk Goes Classic Rock or something. And it was a band called Mayday Parade's cover of We Are the Champions. And I thought, you know what, this is actually pretty good. I mean, not as good as the original at all, but I actually like it. So it was like, that was the thing that sort of broke it down for me, where I was like, okay, it's not insulting to the original. And that's kind of my point now. Someone openly tried to piss me off by linking me to like this female R&B group or something who'd done a cover of Bohemian Rhapsody, and I was thinking, okay, this is probably gonna piss me off because Bohemian Rhapsody is the greatest song ever written ever in the history of forever. And like, I don't think I thought it was great, but at the same time I was like, well, they messed it around so it's their style instead of them trying to emulate Queen. So I was like, I gave them props for that. It's like, well, they did it in their style instead of trying to do it as like a rock thing or whatever. So yeah, that's fine.
I remember one time showing up to rehearsal, and one of my guitar players, as a surprise, had decided to learn the Queen song Jesus off the first record and do it in a very Deicide style, which, if you know anything about Deicide, they're not big fans of Jesus at all. They're like, /Jesus. And so they took the song Jesus from Queen and like made it anti-Jesus. And I was like, man, what are you doing with your time? He just played it. And he just sitting there going, I was like, fuck. I was so blown away by it and appalled and impressed. It was just like, wow, you took everything that was good about that song, made it better in other ways, and then like shit on it at the same time, and somehow it smells like roses. How do you do that? What must your colon look like?
I actually remember a while ago when I was I finally decided, fuck it, I'll give this Adam Lambert guy a listen. Because I was thinking, well, he's a fucking American Idol contestant / winner / whatever the fuck he was, and I was just like, eh. And then I heard some of his stuff, and I was like, huh. If this guy did some Queen covers, I actually would not be opposed to it. Because he at least has the vocal range to be able to pull some of that stuff off.
There was a thing, Britain's Got Talent, which is their whole thing. There's this guy that
Yeah.
looks like the fat dude from Lost. He's like an operatic singer. He's about 15 years old, and he went on with his best friend, who's a really good looking girl. We're talking like Megan Fox hot. Uh, of the two, she's not the better singer. Pavarotti wishes he had this kid's voice. Okay, that's how good he is. But he has this like crippling social anxiety,
Oh.
and he got made fun of at school and all this stuff, and he was in tears when he went on stage. And then he goes out there and he belts out this fucking song, and everyone's like, "Oh, fuck!" And then like Simon, the the queen bitch of all time, he signs them on right there. He just signed them to a deal. To relate it to what we're talking about, look at a guy like Freddie Mercury, whose background did not lend itself to what he ended up doing with his life. His parents constantly put him down for the way he conducted himself, which was not in keeping with their family's religion and things like that. And being gay, fuck, don't even start on that. And yet, with none of the tools we have today to market ourselves, this guy found the right group of musicians, engineered his way into it, and then became one of the biggest vocal icons of all. That is huge. He didn't get to go on some show and be like, "Oh, you're a fat kid. That's sad. Oh, let's find you." What I'm saying is, in today's get rich quick, instant gratification culture, would Queen still be as influential? Unfortunately, the answer is probably not, because people are so goddamn fickle now. They would look at Queen's what we think is their genius as pick a style. I want to hear the same song over and over and over and over and over. That's what I like now. That's what I listen to. Because I'm American.
Actually, that's kind of ironic, because most people that I know that are sort of hypocrites when it comes to that, because they'll say, "Oh, I hate this band, like I hate Nickelback because all their songs sound the same." Then they'll turn around and say, "Oh, this band is awesome," and all their songs sound the same.
Well, that's not why I hate Nickelback. I hate Nickelback because they're absolutely awful, abject nonsense.
I actually like Nickelback. I have to admit that. Like,
I hate
don't
them
really
because
give a
they
shit.
misrepresent my country.
Oh.
I thought you'd hate like most pop idols these days because of that.
Oh, them too.
But Troy has a big hard-on for Cataclysm, though. They get it right. He's like, "No, I don't." But Cataclysm's an awesome Canadian band. Just saying that. Awesome. And Cryptopsy, too. The early stuff, anyway. But they're French-speaking Canadians, so I don't know if that counts. I don't know. I've heard every Canadian I talk to tells me a different story, and correct me on this. I've heard that if you're a non-French speaking Canadian, French-speaking Canadians don't like you as much for some reason, because you're not French. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's true. It's, I don't know, some sort of like, we're French, so we're high and mighty kind of thing.
I love how high and mighty, like, mighty is not a word I would ever use in conjunction with French anything, except for French fries. Because French fries are mighty. They will destroy hunger wherever they see it. It's like the thermonuclear food, like just one French fry. That's all it takes, man.
Actually, I remember a friend of mine once, one day, he'd apparently been listening to a bunch of songs by that band Fun, and he was actually scared. Yeah.
Yes, there's a band called Fun. You haven't heard of them yet?
Well, there's also a band
like
called
LMFAO,
and I don't like them either. So.
Well, I wasn't asking if you liked.
Yeah, apparently with
I'm just being ornery. And Tom, please continue your story. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he'd basically been listening to a bunch of the songs by the band Fun, and he was actually scared by how much they reminded him of Queen. Like, I don't think he thinks they're like on that level yet or anything, but he just like the inspiration they seem to have from Queen reminds him of Queen so much that it actually scared him. And he was like, dude, seriously, like, try to get that thought out of my head, please. So I linked him to like a bunch of other songs or something. I forget what I linked him to.
Well, we're about due for a band that does that. I mean, there'll never be another Queen, but it's about time we had a band that did what they did and did it well. We're about due. We've earned it as a.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of sort of. I've noticed there's a lot of bands popping up these days that are mostly inspired by stuff from like the 70s and 80s and shit. So
just like the 90s and 80s, they had the same thing.
Yeah.
It happens every decade. You just don't hear about it. So many bands out there now, like you're just like it's just throwaway material. It's just it sucks. It sucks. You know, I haven't had a working radio in any of my vehicles for over a decade. I actually disconnect the antenna. I will not listen to radio at all. So when people who haven't heard this band, I go proudly no, don't care.
I actually find it funny that the only artist that I've actually ever heard of having their name inspired by something relating to Queen is Lady Gaga.
That's interesting.
She just took it from Radio Gaga. It's like, I swear that's the only time I've ever heard. I haven't heard of any bands named after a Queen song or something like that, which you hear about a lot, where usually a lot of bands from like, God knows, like the last 10 years or maybe even 20 years or something, there's bands that'll take a name of a song or a lyric from a song from a band way before their time or something.
Like
Just use that
Godsmack
as a
did
band
with
name.
Alice in Chains.
Yes, like that.
There's a song by Alice in Chains
Yeah.
called Godsmack, and
Okay.
I will be fucked if Godsmack does not sound like Alice in Chains, only heavier.
Mm-hmm.
Same band.
Fuck.
And see, like, that's that sloppy stealing. You know, like, there are so many bands that, you know, somebody like Queen has inspired that you probably can't even tell just because they took it and put their own spin on it. And, you know, it's things like, you know, look at their studio techniques. You know, like, Jimmy, how you were talking about, like, multi-tracking vocals and guitar parts and stuff like that. How many bands have done that because Queen did it? Zillions. But because, you know, they're not trying to sound exactly like Queen, it's okay. You know, there's a big difference between being influenced by somebody and wearing those influences on your sleeve.
But yeah, I get what you mean, because like there's usually the thing where you'll hear bands will say, "Oh, you guys must have been inspired by whoever," or it's just like, "Wow, you guys just sound like a ripoff of."
Yeah.
And because Queen did so much, covered so much ground in all aspects of music, again, it's like something you wouldn't necessarily hear. You know, there's a band called Mass Psychosis, and I guarantee you've never heard of them. And they only did one album, and it wasn't very well received, but I thought it was a brilliant record. And they had this, like, 2 or 3 parts, you know, so like total of 2 or 3 parts over the course of the whole record, like little tiny little things, where they did a guitar harmony just so, and it was very Brian May. And this is one where I'll be like, hey, check this out. You know, that's very Brian May. And this is like this little tiny death metal band that no one got into. Very good at their instruments. Like, they got no business being in metal. That's how good they are. And, like, they have a whole, like, 3-minute classical guitar call and answer song. It's 2 classical guitars right smack in the middle of this, you know, record. So that gives you an idea. So then they're like, like a little, like, Brian May thing. You're like, what? Where did that come from? It's obvious, but at the same time, you're just like, yes. It's just one of those moments that jump out at you, which is a very Queen thing to do. Just throw something at you and be like, "I'm gonna smack you over the head with it. Fuck it." And then Freddie goes dancing off with his hands going, "Yee, we're gonna go play something else now."
I actually remember once I used to think that this it was 1,000 greatest songs of all time thingy that a music channel
300
over here
of Queen songs
called Music Max did. And I swear when I originally watched it, it said that Queen came first with Bohemian Rhapsody. And then I looked up the list like a month or two ago, and it said John Lennon's Imagine was number 1. And I was like, no, I will not accept that. Imagine is kind of crap, actually. Like, if anything, I find that song hilarious in that so many like religious people love that song when the song is technically anti-religion.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're gonna let kids sing that at school when it says "Imagine no religion." It's basically what he's saying. And it's like, wow, you're gonna let them sing it. But yeah. Anyway, I was just like, oh, why? I thought Queen won that. God damn it! No. Fuck John Lennon. No, Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, greatest song ever, no contest. Like, fuck you. And the funny thing, I think that was actually, I can't remember whether that was like voted on or something or not, so it was kind of annoying. Like, yeah, if I ever do like a top 10 greatest songs I've ever, like, top 10 favorite songs of all time thing, the easiest pick would just be Bohemian Rhapsody number 1, and then I'd have to work around that. But it's like so hard for me to actually think of an actual, like, even a top 3. So it's just like, well, yeah. If I actually kind of hate having to choose a number 1 favorite song, but if I had to, then it would just like no contest, Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And I probably don't even know what the fuck song is about still, even though it's like. Even though I think it's so fucking great, but at the same time, it's like, well, I don't care what it means. Fuck it. It's just the greatest song ever. I don't know why, it just is. And it's probably like the second Queen song I ever heard, aside from Killer Queen, going by that VHS I brought up earlier. It was just like, the fuck is this? It's like, this is amazing.
That song I actually got tired of. I actually don't like that song very much anymore. Because I've heard it too many times.
Oh well, yeah. That does happen.
I'll never, ever, 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 ever downplay it or say a bad word about it. But it's not the first song comes to mind when I say a favorite Queen song. Not even close.
Well, yeah, that's like fair enough.
It's not that it doesn't have merit or anything. And yes, it probably is the greatest song of all time. But when it comes to favorites, not even on the list anymore.
Well, yeah. For me, a lot of the Queen songs I grew up on, if I made like a list of favorite Queen songs, they'd probably be a bit lower because I've just heard them so much that it's like. But yeah, for some reason, even though I do love the song so much, even though I really can't listen to it too often because I'm afraid that I'm gonna stop liking it if I hear it too much.
My favorite Queen song is easily Dead Time. Because it's like the first grindcore song ever. Sam's like, yeah.
Makes sense, man. It does.
And it's just really heavy and it's all over the place. Really cool.
I think if I had to pick a favorite song, it'd be a tie between the Flash Gordon theme song and Bohemian Rhapsody. I think that's what it'd be. I think my theme song would probably be Flash, and then my favorite song to sing while drunk or drinking is probably Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, get a drink. I want to hear you sing it.
There's no alcohol allowed in my house.
Oh, it's one of those.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I live in one of those places. It's wonderful.
Yeah, don't drink in the house where it's safe. You don't have to go anywhere. Leave the house where you could possibly die from the prospect of drinking.
No, exactly. exactly.
Hopefully you make it back.
It's ridiculous.
That makes a lot of sense.
I know. I know.
So here's a question for you, for the whole panel. And I haven't given this any thought. I just came up with this just now, so I don't know either.
Uh-oh.
If you were, if with choosing one Queen song to be a theme song for your show, what would it be? And it can't be your favorite song unless the song somehow fits your show.
Ooh, actually, I have to admit that I actually was considering for something that I'm gonna be doing that I would use Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon as a theme for something I'm thinking of doing.
Okay, cool. That's a great song too. It's just it up it up it up it up.
Yeah.
I always hear that song and I think
Actually,
of brewing
yeah.
coffee.
I actually heard like an instrumental version of that first. Like someone I'm subscribed to on YouTube had either liked a certain video or made it, and it was like an animation set to an instrumental cover of that. And I was like, "What is this song?" And then like in the description it said "Kissing on a Sunday Afternoon" by Queen. I was like, "By Queen!" And then found like a couple of days later realized, "Oh shit! I never went and looked for that song." And then I heard it and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so kind of just this like silly little minute and a half long song, but it's so fucking good."
Mhm.
It's like such a fun little song." So I was thought, well, a character is kind of that I'm probably going to do is kind of going to be lazy at first. I think it was like that Time Lord character or whatever. So I was like, yeah, that'd work.
I'd probably go with thinking about it. I'd probably go with Liar, because I'm reviewing stuff that I love and I'm ripping it apart.
I love that song.
So like in a way, I am lying to the audience because I love what I'm watching.
Nobody believes me.
You're right, and no one does believe me because they're just like, oh,
Why don't you leave?
that would probably make sense.
I mean, I hate to keep saying I don't know, but honestly, I can't think of none of the Queen songs that immediately pop into my head really kind of shout Samantha Maybe at me. So, I don't know, Jimmy, what do you think would be a good Queen theme song for me?
I'm thinking about it. Well, it'd have to be something that kind of projects like whimsy, but yet also has some intelligence to it. So it can't, like, Lazy on a Sunday Afternoon at first glance might work because it's whimsy, but that's all it is, you know? So honestly, if I had to pick a song for you, it'd be Brighton Rock. Brighton Rock,
Okay.
and it's this song about meeting up with a girl at an amusement park and having a great day, and it's this great kind of, you know, just kind of rockin' tune, and it's really high register. Happy little day, shiver it away, and just kind of, and then after like one verse and one chorus, all of a sudden, da da dun 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 da da, and it goes into this like 2-minute guitar solo, which is just brilliant, and then it comes back to the song for like one verse and chorus, and that's it. But it's like it's just if you know, you just and then it goes way over here into something absolutely brilliant, and then comes back whimsy, and then you're done. Like I think that would, to me, I think of Samantha Maybe, which is just whimsy. I'm gonna go over here, and this is really serious, and then whimsy. See you guys later. Done. You know, if you listen to the song and then go, yes or absolutely not. You know.
Okay, well, after a lot of thought, there's two that I think would come to mind. Just the first one, because my show is just insane.
Yes.
Stone cold crazy.
Absolutely. That's an easy choice, but a good one.
The other one would be Under Pressure.
Huh.
Huh.
Okay.
And that's more just because, you know, like just thinking about, you know, that whole Queen mentality of, you know, they do so many things. Secret. They're all just Queen. You know? And then you add in David Bowie, and it's like this whole other dimension that's just completely awesome.
Or dementia, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of, the mindset behind my show is, I want to take everything and it doesn't matter what it's from. I want to evolve it into my own thing and then just try and make it bigger than life. That's under pressure.
Very cool.
Now that I think about it, for someone like just thinking of like other Queen songs that would work for shows, I actually kind of think that like at the top 40 like charts and all that shit, they should use Radio Gaga for that.
Oh yeah.
It's like, because really that's what it sounds like. Yeah, there's just like all this crap on the fucking radio. It's like all we hear is this shit on the radio. We want better stuff.
I think for Sam's Doctor Who reviews, she could use "You're My Best Friend."
Yeah.
I was actually gonna suggest that song.
That's good. That's really good. But now I have to do a video where I have Radio Gaga and I have the bear going, all we hear is Radio Gaga.
My love for Queen is a thing tempered with a lack of obsession, because for the most part, when I really, really love a band, I tend to be like, all the discographies all the time, never stop listening to them, know all the words, kind of thing. But Queen is one of those bands where like I think I prefer not to be overly familiar with them in terms of the fact like I purposefully don't listen to like a whole album of theirs in a row, because I like kind of rediscovering them every once in a while. I like hearing them and being like the next line sometimes. I think that makes me really happy, because then I feel like Queen's not gone. Freddie's not dead.
We might as well like officially wrap this up. Like so we can put something at the end of it.
Yeah, we talked about Queen and shit. Fuck off.
Perfect.
In case you couldn't tell, that was relatively heavily edited because we had so much to say about Queen that we didn't want to take up your entire weekend. So we hope that you enjoyed this podcast about Queen, easily the best band in the world ever. And if you disagree, I will come to your house and destroy your soul, one quark at a time.
He will.
For thatrule.com, and with that rule the world, I am Jimmy TR.
I'm Alanah Sees.
SkeleTroy Blockbuster.
Samantha Maybe.
And I'm Thomas Fyrehart.
Comrade.
What? Jimmy has a sad. Brr.